that be okay? See if it's working.
Testing.
Okay, and we need to do another switch since it's taking us a little bit longer than I was expecting. Can we switch 2 o'clock instead of 1:30?
Yes.
All right, switch the gear to 2 instead of 1:30. That will give us a little bit of space because lots of people, crowds, and probably McDonald's will be crowded and all this kind of thing. So 2 o'clock instead of 1:30. Okay, but try to be sharp. Try to be on time. If the bad comes to worse, take from McDonald's to go if it's too big of a line or something. Okay, Masada. Can you imagine how hot it can be in July and August here? Not too bad now. But friends, my idea is to give you a little bit of the Exodus experience today. I know that some of you were traveling in Egypt, so you had some of this, but the others probably did not. So this desert gives you a very, very good example of Sinai Desert, just like this. And I have to make a little comment on linguistic concerning the word wilderness or desert, because I found out that when I talk to American people, for them wilderness is woods.
Right.
It's just because of what it is there in the United States and Canada. That's how it is. Probably for the Australians it will be bush. Okay. But in Hebrew, that's this. In other words, remember we said stones. Remember we talked about water, and we talked about stones. And when you look around, what do you see? Stones. There's just no sand. Notice, no sand. No woods, right? No trees, no shrubs, nothing. Deserted, right? It's deserted because no one can live here. There's no water. No one can live here. So that's the concept. The Hebrew word is interesting. For that, I would like you to hear this. It's the word midbar. Okay, let me just give you a little bit of insight into Hebrew language. In Hebrew, all the words usually have 3 letters root. Usually it's 3, sometimes it's 4. But usually it's 3 letters root, and it's consonants, no vowels. Okay? And in the word midbar, can you take all the vowels away? MDBR. So that's the M here is a prefix. Remember it says 3 letters root usually. M is usually a prefix, and so what is left for us is DBR. And DBR is an interesting root. It's actually a Hebrew word for word. And also it's a Hebrew word for flesh. Okay? Would that give you a hint in John chapter 1? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh and tabernacled with us. Okay, so if you put this in Hebrew, okay, we don't have the Hebrew original of this, but if you put this in Hebrew language, that would be, in the beginning was davar, which is word, right? And davar became davar and tabernacled with us. Okay? So the word and flesh in Hebrew is the same word, and also the desert connected to this. Why is that? Because in the desert, as you look around, you probably, and I've heard that from some of you said, oh, that is so cool. Oh, it is so nice. Oh, it is so breathtaking. Oh, it is so wonderful. It is. When you are in an air-conditioned bus, when you have, use the restrooms, plenty of water to drink, cable car up, nice and shady area, and all that is cool, right? But if you don't have all that comforts, and imagine, how long can you live without drinking, sweating water? couple of days, yes, something like this, and you suffer miserably because of that. And who can save you? Whom do you cry out to? That's it. There's no one else, and so there's no other partner here in this story, but God, who is going to restore you, giving you His flesh, davar in midbar. So it's all connected. That's what I'm trying to dig to. Okay, word, flesh, desert. Okay, that's connected, and that will be a little bit of our experience today. The desert as a refuge. The desert as a refuge, or what is your true refuge? Okay. And we do meet a number of characters in both Old Testament and New Testament in the desert, don't we? Okay. Can you maybe name me 1, 2, 3? Whom? Abraham. What is he doing in the desert?
Being led by God.
Wandering.
Traveling.
No. No, Moses, yes, but not Abraham. Abraham is not in the desert. No, he's traveling by the Route 66, okay, to the land unknown, etc. And he's not in the desert that much. But Moses and the whole Exodus experience, all right? The whole Exodus experience is in the desert. What are those Jewish people doing in the desert in the Exodus story? Why are they in the desert?
Looking for promised land.
Promised land.
Complain.
They are running away, right? They're hiding. They're running away from, what's his name? Pharaoh, right? They're, of course, looking for the safety of the promised land, etc. But they are basically running away. They're trying to find a refuge. But it's very difficult because of the climate, like what you see. And that's why, folks, why Exodus has such a central position in the Jewish history. Because if you look at this, you say it's impossible. It's impossible to live for how long? 40 years?
40
In an
years.
environment like that, it's impossible unless it's a miracle. Can you think about it? This is a great miracle. That's why we are commanded to remember this miracle. How do we do that? Passover, sure thing. We Jews celebrate the Passover. What about you Christians?
Passover.
Candle on Shabbat for that.
We prefer
Pesach.
I'm not sure you do.
We don't.
Right, you don't. You don't. So think about it. You're missing on a big chunk of a miracle of God.
Pesach.
I'm not trying to say that you should celebrate resurrection. On the contrary, far be from that. Because resurrection is the most wonderful thing. And all of us should celebrate that. But why should we forget about Exodus?
Shouldn't.
We shouldn't? We really shouldn't. Because such a great thing God provided.
And just the people, Mickey, the flocks.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole thing. And being here probably can bring this a little bit of life.
Isn't one of the candles you light on the eve of Shabbat for the remembrance of the Exodus?
Oh, absolutely as well. Sure. It's a big thing. It's a big thing in Jewish tradition, and that's why it is reflected in the New Testament. Friends, it is reflected in the New Testament. Who is in the New Testament in the desert?
John.
Jesus, John, and Jesus as well. John and Jesus in the desert as well. What is Jesus doing in the desert? Temptation. Remember, we passed this mountain yesterday in Jericho, and we talked a little bit about temptation. There are 2 temptations, and remember the first temptation. What was it?
Food.
Right. That's exactly right. Satan said, "Turn this stones into bread." Right. And how long was the temptation?
40 days.
40 days.
All right. I would like to teach you a Hebrew word for fast. What in English is fast. Okay. In Hebrew, it's actually tzom, T-Z-O-M, and this is to abstain from drinking water. Okay. Any liquid. Water.
Spell it
Okay.
again.
T-Z-O-M.
T-Z-O.
Because you don't have th sound in English, it's TZ. All right, so it's tzom. In other words, 40 days without water. And we have doctors here. Can a human being live for 40 days without water? No. The answer is no. Unless it's a great miracle. Unless it's supernatural. It gotta be supernatural. And 40 corresponds with what? It's 40 years of the wilderness, right? 40 years. Long time, right? In other words, just to make sure everybody understands, it's such a long time that unless it's a supernatural thing, you cannot survive that without the water. Okay? And so we can see even in the life of Jesus, we see that important hint to Exodus story. Jesus in the wilderness. In the wilderness like this, near Jericho. It's just like that. Why near Jericho? Because he was baptized near Jericho by John the Baptist, who was also an interesting fellow. And what would be John's comparison in the Old Testament?
Elijah.
Absolutely, Elijah.
Elijah.
Sure, Elijah. That is Elijah. And Elijah had a desert experience as well. Remember we talked about Mount Carmel? Well, what Mount Carmel, this is where he had a great fight and victory over the prophets of Baal. And then he goes wilderness. He goes wilderness. And he had a wilderness experience. And we mentioned that he ended up taken up in the chariot of fire. That is why the Bible says he will return, right? He will return as a herald, as someone who declares the coming of the Lord. Okay, so those two important characters in the New Testament have their parallel in the Old Testament, and that is connected to the wilderness. So that's one thing. So I hope that you will not have romantic feelings about the wilderness. So the wilderness as a refuge, the wilderness as a refuge on the one hand, but on the other hand, that's where you depend on God. This is where you so much depend on God. And remember Psalm 21, the Lord is my shepherd, right? We will maybe talk about this a little bit more in details. Another thing that in Psalm 21, that the Lord prepared the table in the presence of my enemies. Okay? 23, excuse me. Yes, 23. Okay, so imagine, you and me are here, a bunch of slaves running away from Egypt, and we are attacked by the enemies. It's bad. Our chances of survival are very, very, very little. Okay? And so, again, where do we find our refuge? Where do we cry out? Cry out to the Lord to protect us. What was in the Exodus story? What happened in the Exodus story? The parting of the sea. Remember that parting of the sea, of the Red Sea, and killing the enemies,
Pharaoh.
the enemies of Israel. Right. So here in our story, where we are today, we see a fortress in the desert. Right. The fortress in the desert that was built by Herod the Great. Everything that you see here was built by Herod the Great, who had a different concept of all that. You see? His idea was that I can make myself safe. I can protect myself from any possible enemy, and that's what you're going to see. And it is truly impressive. It's impressive. Folks, in the middle of nowhere, to see all that, I just think about how much money it required to build this thing, how many people died building all that, what a project it was, just for this one king. Why would he do that? Why would he go into such an expense to do that? By the way, he built 5 of those. 5 fortresses like this. Wow. 5. This is just the largest. But there are 5.
Is this Herod the Great?
Herod the Great.
Okay.
Herod the Great. Why would he do that? Why would he go to such expense? Well, because remember, he was afraid that the Jews would rebel against him. That was his constant fear. That's why he was trying to kill Jesus, right? Killing all his babies and everything. So he builds a number of fortresses on the way, especially this one is on the way to Edom. Can we, friends, look across the Dead Sea? The territory across the Dead Sea is called Moab. Okay, anybody would remember who came from Moab?
Yeah.
Ruth. Yep, Ruth from Moabite. but Ruth came from Moab. Next area down south would be Edom. And some of you have traveled in Jordan visiting Petra,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Edom.
Yes.
That's in Edom, Petra. Okay. And that's where Herod the Great came from. His family, his ancestry, his family came from that area. And so on the way to Petra, he builds fortresses like that to be able to escape if necessary in the case of trouble, right? And it is truly impressive. So everything that you see was built by Herod the Great. You will be able to see black line. I don't know if you noticed. Sometimes there's a black line that runs on the walls here. That's a line of reconstruction. Everything below the black line was actually found here. Above the black line was restored by archaeologists. Okay, so all that area was built by Herod the Great as a protection. But also, what I think he did, he would invite Roman dignitaries to treat them here in this place, to impress them, just like you are impressed. So they were impressed as well. Believe it or not, it was an interesting experience once. About 12 years ago, 18 years ago, suddenly the loudspeakers were on and said, all the guys, please hold your groups.
Oh.
That was enough. And then the helicopter came, landed right here, landed. Guess who came out from the helicopter? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. 15 minutes or so, walked around. Everybody stood still and walked around, got back in the helicopter, off he goes. Top secret mission. Nobody knew that he went to visit Masada for security reasons. Nobody knew that. But that was quite interesting to see. I don't think Herod had a helicopter. However, and no cable car, by the way, right? But if you are a Roman dignitary, like maybe a senator or something like this, they will carry you. Carry you. That's to impress, because here they had green, right where we are. They had areas, gardens, thank you. Gardens for vegetables that they will, or fruits that they will grow for the king's table. They had pools here with water. Can you imagine they had so much water? They had about 250,000 gallons of water that was collected here, because there's no spring, right? They got it from the rain that's got 3 inches of rain a year. And down below, I'll show you where they had gullies. Those river beds, they will stop the rainwater, dam them. Remember that the Dead Sea is low? Remember how low it is? 1,200 feet below this. We're roughly at the sea level. Can you imagine? This is the sea level. This is sea level? This is sea level. 1,200 feet below is the Dead Sea. So you can imagine that all the rain that falls in Jerusalem will run down by gravity, right, to the Dead Sea. So they've blocked those streams, dammed them, and made the slaves carry the water.
Pack
Carry
it
the
up.
water. Carry the
Bizarre
water.
to take a cable car to do
Yeah, it's just, it's incredible. And if the slave dies on the way, what happens?
They just roll him from the hill.
Get another one. Sure, nothing happens, get another one. And we talk about, Keith, where's Keith? We talked about humbleness today, right?
Yes.
Here we go. We just replace the slave because he's a slave and that's his destiny, people. If you die, that's it.
Tough love.
That's it. No, no one cares. So that's Herod the Great. He dies somewhere in the year 4 BC, somewhere around 4 BC. And then this place was abandoned. And you know why? Because no one had enough money to maintain it. It's too expensive to maintain. And then it was a war of the Romans against the Jews against the Romans at 66 AD. The Romans prevailed, destroyed Jerusalem, you know that. And some of them came up to Masada. About 1,000 people came up to Masada. And they said, we will fight until we die against the Romans. Okay? And you saw the movie, how the Romans were fighting here for 3 years. They build a cable car. They didn't build a cable car. They built a ramp. Sorry, we will see that on the other side. Sorry. Build a ramp. And it's still visible. It's still there. They built a ramp. They brought up a tower and a log. Can you imagine a log on the chains? A big wooden log with the ram head, and swinging this log, bumping against the gate or the wall. I'll show you where they actually broke into. We'll see that where they broke into the fortress. And then when the Jewish zealots saw that they're going to be prevailed next day, remember what they decided to do? They decided to commit suicide, kill themselves and their women and children, those who were around. And when the Roman general Peter O'Toole came, remember? Yeah, blew out. Oh, he was a handsome guy. And he saw nothing. All right. So that's the second stage. Then again, there was a break. Nobody could afford to stay here, and nobody could afford to maintain this place for about 450 years. And then a group of monks. Remember, it's the time when the Romans became Christians, and a group of monks lived here. Can you see this building with the window?
Yes.
Building with the window. It's from the 5th century AD church. Small chapel for these monks. They lived here for about 150 years. And then your friends from Saudi Arabia came. Guess what your friends did to the monks?
Killed them.
They killed them. I wonder, why do you have friends like this?
We do too.
So they conquered Israel, the Muslims from Saudi Arabia, which is not very far from us, came over, conquered Israel, continued on. And since that time, since the year 638 of the year of the conquest, nobody lived here. And you can see it's still in ruins until today. All right? And that's maybe something that should be a little bit like a motto in your head.